Welcome to That's So Rad podcast. I'm your host, Travis Vonksness. This is a podcast about people, their passions, their life experiences, and their stories. As writer Frederick Buechner once said, the story of any one of us is in some measure the story of us all. All of us can learn something valuable from someone else's life and their stories. Join us for another conversation where we learn, laugh, and leave, seeing our own life in new ways. What's more rad than that? Welcome to this next episode of That's a Rad podcast. I'm your host, Travis. The Rad Tour bus is headed down to Georgia today, so to see a good friend of mine who I have not caught up with for a while, but we have stayed in touch. Seth Teegarden. Welcome to the podcast, Seth.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here.
Great having you. Love the backwards hat, the pink hat. We didn't plan the coordinated backwards hats on this, but we both are sticking with it. And I didn't want to be the first to change mine around and then be like, there's like some kind of, I don't need like, so we'll
just settle into it. Just roll with it.
We think alike, I guess. That's so, right. And actually we really do. So, when I think of you, Seth, one of my favorite life quotes comes to mind, and it's by the writer Kurt Vonnegut. And I love this quote so much, and I feel like I see this in your life. Kurt says, "Enjoy the little things in life, for one day you'll look back and realize that they were the big things." Mm-hmm. When I just being friends with you, seeing you and what your life looks like, even from afar, it just feels like you're someone that you just drink from the well of life. Whether it's hobbies. It could be cooking. I mean, just being around you. I remember that. What appear to be little normal things, you're all in. And it's so contagious. And I love that about you.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. I think what's funny is I don't think I was always like that.
Okay.
It's been interesting to sort of watch that grow. I remember being probably college age. I'd gone to Bible college and I was ready to take on the world and pastor some big church, right? Like that was the thing. And my brain was way out there. It was get a wife, get a church. And there's a larger story here, but I remember when that, I got the wife part, but when the church part like didn't happen immediately, and the, how all that kind of happened and the Lord worked through all that, it reset my gaze to those types of things of, where, and it was it's still an ongoing process, right? Like I still haven't figured it out, but I credit Diana, my wife. I credit her with so much of that. I mean, truthfully, just being able to see the simple things and get your mind off of this big picture and just be present. Right. Yeah.
That's a great line. That is it right there. Be present. And just lean into where you're at. So for the people that don't know who you are, we're going to learn more about you as we go in this conversation. But just give us a flyover of Seth Teegarden, who you are, what you're doing, kind of in life, your family.
Yeah. So I start kind of currently and work back. Simple. So I live up in the mountains of North Georgia, beautiful mountains. I am married to my wife, Diana, of 15 years now, and we've got 4 children. We've got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old, and then a 10-year age gap, and we'll cover some of why of that here in a little while. But 10-year age gap, and then we have a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old, sort of backing up the train. But we have sort of served in various different capacities in ministry from most of our adult life. I currently serve as a full-time youth pastor here in Ellijay, Georgia. Where our paths have intersected, being house parents or family teachers at Thornwell. And, we did that for about 7 years total. And, I think the quick summary is, me and my wife together are people that just genuinely love and care for people and want to see people come to know the beauty and love and grace of our Savior in any way that we can do that. And we've been able to do that in the world of kids ministry and youth ministry and along with their parents as well. And so, that's the quick flyover. I grew up here in Georgia. just about an hour south of where I live currently. And it was funny. I grew up coming up to these mountains as a kid and would do backpacking trips and all that. And never imagined that I would actually get to live here one day. But grew up down there about an hour south, and grew up in a awesome family, people that cared for us well. And I went off to college to go study ministry and pastoral ministry, and this is where the Lord has taken us. So.
Very cool. It's a great flyover, great setup of who you guys are, what you're up to, kind of where your radar is in the world. And we'll dive more into that as we go. But us going back sort of in our convergence, as you said, was at Thornwell Children's Home in Clinton, South Carolina. And, in some other episodes, I've had guests on that, are also friends, and we've kind of talked some about that life and kind of what that was like to, in a sense, really be, I would describe it as foster parents. I mean, it's a different capacity because it's a residential setting, but really you are, although very different in many ways as well from a licensed foster home where you're, we rotated in and out. They don't get to do that unless they have respite care. We had much larger amounts of kids that we were trying to manage typically than a normal foster home would be. But a lot of that still was very much really like foster care in that sense.
That's how I describe it. It's such a unique thing to describe. If I'm given the quick 30-second, we were full-time foster parents to 8 kids.
Yeah. 100%. And I think because of that place too, it was so family centric. Like when you think of group care, and a lot of them that have shut down, rightly so, are because they've been, horribly managed, or it was just like kind of like the Annie orphanage thing that was just so, wrong on a bunch of levels. But that was very much a really amazing place when we were there together. So
it was.
Yeah. So just, what are some memories that come to mind of being there?
Well, it's
doing
funny.
That life.
I was, we've talked a little bit about some of this, but, you've had a few guests now on the podcast that both of us know well that we've, that we worked with or did life with on some capacity there in Clinton and through Thornwell. And it was funny listen to your interactions with them about some of their memories of Thornwell and life there. I'll tell you one of my first memories of getting to meet you guys was you were coming in as new house parents, and I don't remember on campus where it was we met for the first time. All I remember is you wearing these high tube white socks with like black circles around the top. And my first thought was like, what a dork. Like, who is this guy? And keep in mind, I was like, 22, 23 years old at the time, who clearly had it all figured out. And I was hardcore judging this new guy who I couldn't even pronounce his last name.
That's funny. Dude, was I really wearing that? I mean, because,
straight up, dude. Yes.
And why I'm saying is not that, I mean, I was into a huge punk rock. I mean, that's a very punk rock look. But I thought at that time, this is 2013, I thought I was out of that. Apparently not. Maybe
it was a one-off. I don't know.
I want to say it was a one-off, but I'm glad that I had that. That's what your takeaway was.
It was great, dude. No, but it was pretty cool though. Over the next, I mean, one of the unique things about doing that work is you get to know people really quickly, and you're either going to really learn to love them or really hate them. I mean, and hate, that's a strong word, but you're either really going to connect or you're just not going to spend time together. And because you're doing this life with these other people on such an intimate basis, right? Like you're with each other constantly. And so it was pretty cool how over the course of the first few weeks you guys were there and we got to hang out a little bit, that friendship kind of blossomed and, got to know your heart for ministry and like why you guys were there. And even the story of how you got there, which I think you shared on the podcast recently of how the Lord brought you there. Anyway, it was cool to get to hear your heart. But I think where we really started to connect and really started hanging out was through mountain biking. And, we started working on those trails in the back that you had started. You actually gave me my very first mountain bike. It was that old Gary. Yeah, it was that old Gary Fisher. It was that yellow Gary Fisher that somebody from town you had gotten from. Somebody from town gave you this bike, and you were like, "All right, this is cool." And you gave it to me And that was it, man. The rest is history at this
that
point.
was the gateway drug to all your
Yes.
Man, dude, and yeah, you said that, you described that really well. First of all, like being at a campus where none of us, I mean, I had no idea what this was like. So we came from St. Louis. People came from all over the country. It seemed like God really did call.
Yeah.
This is a very specific calling. But it felt like you get there, and to me, what it reminded me of was this huge sprawling campus where it felt like between a combination of going back in college in a way, only you have kids and you're like you actually have responsibilities.
Yes.
And also like almost like a camp counselor. I've done that, like because you're hanging out in this thing with, other people around, like you said, that you're kind of, I mean, your peers with. So you either are you're not going to be friends with everybody, but it's going to really suck if, you're there and no one can stand you or, and I mean,
that might've been the case.
And
maybe I was that guy. I don't know.
Well, I'll come clean. No, I think that we had a lot of fun, and but you're right. And you naturally just like in life, you would just normally pair up with, I guess it felt like since it was rotational, there tended to be, I don't know, let's just estimate back in the day, like if there was 8 houses open, I don't remember.
I think there was like 10. I think 10. So. Yeah.
Okay, so if everyone had 2 people in them, 2 adults, 2 husband, wife, on sort of a similar rotation, then that meant that when you come off, we call it off duty, you were all off together. And they had provided housing stuff. So that's where, to me, it was like this college experience was like weird. I'm like, I don't know what I was at the time, age-wise, but I was well past.
Yeah.
Gosh, 2013. So, but anyway, it's like.
Well, what's funny, I think when you were talking to Everett the other day, you both were talking about living in that duplex. I think I lived in that duplex before either one of you. I don't remember all the timeline, but at some point, I think all 3 of us lived in one side or the other of that duplex, but not ever together, right?
But not ever together.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. Now that you say that, I forgot about that. You were in there.
Because I had gotten that trampoline at one point that we like carried it all across campus from the other side of campus. I got from like Mike and Bethany. I got their trampoline and hauled it on top of my truck, and I would jump off of the back porch of the duplex onto the trampoline.
That's oh my gosh, I forgot about all that stuff. Wow. It's funny how just talking about this stuff, it all like starts to come back.
And then the train, the train would go by
the
like
train
every
was right
hour.
There.
Yeah.
Wild stuff. Yeah. It was
anyway,
like
good times.
Yeah, man. But you guys went on to do that residential stuff
again
elsewhere too, right? After that?
Did. Yeah, so we were there at Thornwell for right about 2 years. And while we were there, so we started, it was wild, just how the Lord brings different people at different times. We started at 22 years old with an 8-month-old kid. You talk about green, having never done anything like that before, and we show up on campus like, hey, here's your 8 middle school girls. Holy cow. Like, wow. Jump in with both feet into the deep end. And so we did that and enjoyed it. But while we were there, we had our second kid, and he was born while we were there at Thornwell. And when he was about a year, it was a lot. There was a lot going on. We had 2 young kids, and it was just it was kind of the right time and season for us to kind of move on from that at the time. Mm-hmm. And honestly, and she would tell you this today, I mean, it was a lot of Diana. She did a lot. She was put through a lot, just making things happen and doing things, especially at an all-girls home. She sort of had to do a bunch of the appointments and doctor stuff, and she just, with 2 small children, she was kind of done. And so we ended up moving back home to Atlanta for a few years and just kind of did life and worked some regular 9-to-5 jobs for a while. And then in a strange twist of events, because I was the one that wanted to stay at Thornwell. I didn't want to leave. Mm-hmm. And it was actually a really hard time for me. I think you and I talked quite a bit during that time as we were leaving from there. And mm-hmm. It was a struggle. I was leaving all of my friends. I was leaving what I considered my life's calling in ministry. Mm-hmm. But it was also the right thing to do to take care of my wife and make sure that she was well nurtured and cared for. And so the move back home was difficult. But 3 years of doing that, I remember the Lord changed my mind, or I had changed my mind. I was like, great. I checked my box of helping. We did 2 years. This is good. I'm out. And about 3 years into, us being back home, Diana came down one day and was like, hey, remember that place that we applied for years ago to be house parents at? And it's a place called Christian City in South Atlanta. And I was like, yeah. She goes, well, they're looking for new house parents. I was like, oh, good for them. It's not going to be us. And she goes, well, we've got an interview tonight. And I was like, what?
Whoa.
She goes, yep, I applied. Holy cow. She goes, yep, not just that I applied, but they already called me. And the real quick backstory is they were ready to hire us like 5 years before, and there wasn't an opening, and then there was supposed to be, and we ended up not going. Matter of fact, we moved to Thornwell. And the day we were moving in, I got a call from the guy down there at Christian City. He said, hey, we got an opening if you want to come. I was like, man, we're sorry, we took the other job. So 5 years later, she goes, hey, we've got an interview. They want to hire us, and they want to talk to us tonight. You talk about a whirlwind. I went from one day going, I'm never, 3 years of me saying I'm never doing this again, to in one day, my wife was like, we've got an interview tonight, and we're gonna talk to this guy.
And you had no clue.
No clue.
How much marriage therapy then after that had to happen?
Well,
to...
so here's the rest of the story.
Gosh.
It was pretty wild. I got a list on a notebook pad, and I wrote down, probably 50 or 60 reasons why we shouldn't go. And we talked to the guy that night. And dude, I kid you not, every single thing on that list was checked off. We got done with the conversation, and I remember we hung up. And basically, he left it at, well, guys, that's sort of in your court. This job is yours if you want it. And he said, but he said, we're in the middle of an interview process, so if you could let me know by tomorrow. Like,
oh, jeez.
So we hung up, and I remember we were sitting on our bed, and I looked at Diana. I said, well, I guess we're moving to Christian City. And it really was that simple. Like, it really was. In the span of an afternoon and a conversation with her and with this guy, it was very clear that was where we were supposed to go. And it sounds crazy, right? Like, you tell that story and somebody's, wait a minute, you uprooted your entire life for one afternoon of a conversation? I'm like, yeah, I guess we did.
Well, so I am curious, and everyone's wired different, marriages are different. How we're like, what was her thinking of, like, just kind of that setup of, like, this is kind of setting you up for that?
So
was it
to be fair, yeah, she actually didn't know it was that serious when she just saw the job and was like, well, I'm just gonna reach out and see what's what they got, and sent like the application back. She's like, oh, I'm just gonna turn it in. It's not, This isn't anything. And she was like, I'll tell Seth later tonight. We can talk about it. Like, it wasn't anything, right? She was just kind of saw it. And I think she saw it on Facebook. And when the guy who we had talked to, 5 years before saw her name come through in the email, called her immediately and was like, is this really Diana? Like, Diana and Seth? Like, are you Teegarden? And she goes, yeah. And his name was Phil. His name was Phil Coons. And he goes, this is Phil. Are you seriously applying? And he basically was like, we will hire you today. And she was like, whoa, like, so to be fair, to her credit, it's like she wasn't trying to shove or push that. It just sort of happened.
It got real quick. And that is interesting too, of like how the difference, and this can be jobs across the board, but in this case, how different, hiring at places like that can be, because as you and I both know, like the interview at Thornwell, which we've talked about before, was like a 10-hour, put you through the ringer, essentially saying, we're going to try to, I walked away feeling like they did right by basically saying, we're going to try to like dissuade you in a way. Like we're going to give you every shot why we, either you want to, think maybe why you shouldn't do this, or we're going to like, kind of put you through the fire. And I think they should have and did.
100%.
Yeah. And we, on the way down on our interview for that one, out of the blue, got a job interview at another one, just out of the blue. And it was what you're saying. It was literally a 45-minute interview, and you have the job. Yeah. And it was like, that was a huge red flag of like.
Now, we had gone through the whole interview process at Christian City already before.
Yeah.
So
and that's different.
It was a little different, but still, like.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think we've had a lot of conversations around foster care, and obviously the need is extreme. Always, it's always a crisis everywhere, just capacity wise. So you kind of get the sense, the urgency of some of these places that they're just churning through people, and it's just like, almost desperation for some. But it's awesome that that continued to be part of your journey. You guys were incredible at it. I think when I think of you back to that being on campus and just your level of energy and enthusiasm and just outward doing stuff, I think that was such I mean, times have even changed since like 2015, 18, wherever that kind of ballpark was. Yeah. With even like screen time and like smartphones and stuff. But even then, I mean, getting kids out just to do stuff was.
Remember the bonfires back behind the house?
Oh, dude. Yeah. How do you still have eyebrows? I mean, you had a. Well, they do grow back, or you painted them on. But I forgot about you had like a 12-foot ring, and it was.
Well, were you there? Were you there for the massive bonfire we did on the other side of the lake? Were you there for that when we lit like 100 Christmas trees on fire? You don't remember that?
I would think I remember. Okay. I feel like I remember stories of it.
This was a Seth and John Byron special. Were you there when we had the Christmas tree lot?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I do remember that.
All right. So, which I talk about a side story. Anyway. So John and I, after the Christmas season, decided we've got all these leftover Christmas trees, and there was this unique thing in Clinton where the city would come around and pick up your Christmas trees from your front yard, basically, right? You'd throw them out on the curb. And so John and I got in his truck and collected everybody's Christmas trees from Clinton that we could. And we hauled them back to the backfield of Thornwell and piled them up. I mean, massive, massive pile of trees. And I don't exaggerate. I mean, there was every bit of 60 trees.
How high was the pile, do you feel
Dude,
like?
It was
15 feet?
Oh, yeah, like we were having to throw them up on the top. And, we had built up this whole big thing and crossed them. Anyway, massive. And then we let them sit, right? Like we let them get dried out. And I don't remember. I have to go back and look at my pictures of when we actually did the fire, but it was months later. And we alerted the Clinton Fire Department and like just told them we were doing it. And we dug a little trench around and poured some water, which looking back, it did nothing. We lit this thing on fire, dude. I wish I had the picture in front of me. I can find it. But I mean, you talk about the largest flame I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh my gosh.
There's a picture of me and John standing together and Danny taking a picture of us, and you can see this. It's a panoramic, and the flame in the background is higher than you could. And this is after it had gone down. I mean, it was massive. Yeah,
that is wild. I feel like I don't think I was there, but I remember the story of.
You would have been around campus.
Okay,
you had to have been.
Well, we might have been in Charleston, or
you
we
might have been out of town
or something like that. Wow, that's probably showed up on a satellite or something that night.
Right?
Earth. That's insane. Wow. Do you feel like, did you guys get permission for that, or is it just like we're gonna do this?
No. But all the campus came out. Remember, you could go back behind that gate, and the two lake houses. So we announced it. Like we never asked anybody if we could do it.
Well, and that's
like,
the
hey,
thing.
We're doing it.
You ask and it's a no. So just knowledge means,
I remember we just sent a message out to all the house parents that were on duty and like, hey, we're bonfire tonight down by the lake.
That's crazy. Wow. Yeah. Well, I look back too, like when we were building mountain bike trails and stuff like that. It was kind of similar to that. It was like, we just did it.
That's right.
And thankfully, I think, there was sort of like, we're not going to really check to how, but I mean, we have like tools out there and cutting tools. And
it was great.
I mean, it was like, but
we made some legit trails though. Like we had some pretty awesome trails.
We did.
I think if I remember right, at one time you could ride from our cottage around a special route, get back out there to the back and back around. And there was several miles of trails that we had created.
I mean, I think if you go from start to finish, I mean, it was just because I think it was like, wasn't it like 400 acres total of land or something? Yep. And then, it was so, gosh, that was crazy. And then, we had that mountain bike race. Do you remember that?
No.
That was the magnum opus of the whole thing.
Was that after
you weren't there?
No, I might have not been there.
If you weren't there, you were either
Man,
you had to have been gone.
Yeah.
At a new job or something. Because wow. So you didn't know about the race?
No, I don't remember this.
Wow, dude. I mean, that was so like this is like my moment to shine.
Yeah. This was like
but
your
I mean,
thing.
we had the mountain bike trails. I think there was like 2 categories of races. Like we had like elementary to maybe it was 3.
Okay.
It was middle school and high school.
Okay.
And all the cottages were there. It was kind of they did like a pig picking deal, and the races were kind of the feature, and had like medals and a ceremony afterwards. I mean, it was pretty wild.
No,
it was
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was one of the things I'm like, I still look back at that memory.
Yeah.
And just like the fondness of that time and like just things like that, where you like were making, you're just making stuff up.
Yeah.
You know, like making entertainment up, making fun up.
Yep. I think we call that pulling it out of your butt.
I mean, yeah, I think so. And it was just like, but it was amazing to, I don't know, just watch the kids who, some of these kids may have come from Atlanta or from and maybe never mountain biked, or, we're in a family that, culturally wasn't a thing. So getting to do that and experience that, it was awesome. I mean, they were growing doing that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, getting to see kids experience something in life that they never would have.
Yeah.
And even just a little, like, even if it's just for a moment, right? Because you and I both know that same kid that has the sparkle in their eyes, like 20 minutes later is like cussing you out in your house, right? Or trying to slit your tires. But those moments, true story, when I was relieving you at your house.
Oh, at one of my kids was.
That's right.
Huh? Yeah, okay, that sounds right.
But getting to see that sparkle in their eyes, even just for a few moments, is just the most beautiful thing,
Well, and you're right. And I think like, now we have distance behind that and, you've had time to reflect or learn more. I've, now that I'm with America's Kids Belong, there's so much more I've kind of resource wise have delved into and stuff. But like when you're in the weeds there in the thick of it, it's hard to like kind of see the forest for the trees.
Yep.
And so I think like now seeing like just what would it have been like if you were in their shoes to be in foster care where you don't know what tomorrow holds? Will you ever go home? There's so much swirling uncertainty. You may have actually been physically abused. You may have, all kinds of things have happened to you to where, why wouldn't you be slitting tires? How would you be coping, And so I think, having them to have these outlets where even if it was a win for a day to like have a few hours of like coping by having a good time in the woods, I don't know, getting your mind off your awful at that time life.
Yep.
So
you're right, man.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things as we kind of continue through our convergence of things here is hairstyles. So there's a beard there. That's a good.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
No, that's a solid. The canvas is full.
Yeah,
that's a good.
Yeah. I normally
you can grow it.
I normally keep it kind of lined up a little bit. It's a little rough right now, but yeah. So here's the thing. I normally don't like. If mine gets about as long as yours, I can't let it stay that long because I do lots still, running and biking and all that. And I hate that sweaty beard. I can't.
Sweaty.
Yeah, I've pushed through before. I've tried. I've grown it. I use all the products. I keep it nice.
Right.
And at some point, I just like I can't do it.
Well, and we're going to be talking about some of like what races you run. Maybe the aerodynamic thing is a factor at some level. You start getting
on the bike for
stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
But okay, so legit beard right there. But also you have an interesting thing with just hairstyle. Like maybe you've settled down now. But
so I haven't told you. So all right. So here's the story. So I grew up in a really conservative Christian home, and if your hair touched the top of your ears, you were probably already pronounced a child of Satan. So I kept it super high and tight, clean, and then in Bible college, like we would legit get demerits if your hair, if the back of it touched your shirt collar, demerits. If your hair on your ears touched your ears, demerits. And if your sideburns came down literally, and I wish I was kidding, they would bring a ruler. If your sideburn came halfway down your ear below that, demerits. So
this was your college?
This was my college, yeah.
You chose to go there.
Fair point. So
you still owe money at the no.
So the other rule they had about hair, it was, and I to this day I have no idea why. I don't know why any of it, but they had a rule you were not allowed to shave your head. No, you couldn't shave your head.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, I always wanted to shave my head, but I couldn't while I was in school. And so the day after I graduated, I told my wife, we had gotten married before my senior year, right? So I told Diana, I was like, I'm going to shave my head the day after I graduate. She was like, no, you won't. And I did, because I wanted to shave it. And that led to me having a bald head, straight razor shaved like it is now for years. And actually, when we moved to Thornwell, where we met over there, I didn't have it anything but bald for the most part. I think I grew it out a little bit at one point and then shaved it back off, but nothing crazy. And then that went on, the 3 years that we lived back in Atlanta, same thing.
Yep.
And then right after we moved to Christian City, it wasn't too long after I started growing it out. I was like, you know what? I've never grown my hair out. I'm curious, what it looks like. And I realized I had these beautiful curly locks. And so I let it grow and it was long for a few years. And I shaved it all back off again right before we moved here to LJ. And then right after we moved up here, same thing, grew it back out again and had it, never touched it. I got it trimmed a little bit a couple times, but truthfully, I mean, if you go back on my Facebook profile, like you can see the different
back
things.
And forth.
Yeah. But dude, this is wild. So this is what happened. So about 2.5 months ago, I was working on my car, and I was trying to take off. I needed to get a bolt way on the inside off of my axle, and so I had a big impact driver on a massive long extension, and I had it down, and I had my hair pulled up in a bun, and I leaned into it. And when I leaned into it and pulled the trigger, it grabbed the whole side of my hair and ripped it out.
Oh my gosh!
Ripped it out, tore it out, and
dang,
a bunch of it was still in there. So I had to, the drill is now caught to my head. I had to put it in reverse, pull it out. When I look down, what I'm seeing is the entire side of my hair caught in the drill, and so hence now why it's shaved again.
So I mean, you're partially scalped from that.
It was. It started to grow back a little bit now. You can see it coming in, but yeah, it bled a little bit, and it was
dang
pretty intense pain there for a little while.
Oh, I bet. That's awful. So that's the origin of
that's why. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting too. Like how even I feel like you feel different, like maybe your persona changes a little bit. Like there's always, I don't know, like I feel like so my daughter is, she's now a junior, and I've kind of grown my hair back out. And then like recently I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it's time I got to go bald. You've got the you just feel there's something more, I don't know, that's like funny. Primal. And I will.
Here, the problem I have with being bald is I'm not bald. I have a big full head of hair. And so it grows fast. So to keep it bald, I have to shave it once every day or 2 days max. And so it's actually more work for me to keep it like this than it is to let it grow.
Yeah, right on.
So I'm gonna keep it for the rest of the summer and into the fall, and then I'll probably start growing it back out again. I probably won't go as long as I had it before. But yeah, we'll see.
It's a variety. But I mean, I think that kind of fits just your personality too. Just like you're just, life is just what's the next. But I was always like that with facial hair. Like, I mean, I've had a rock the beard now for quite a while, but it was always like, I mean,
dude,
I
you're
had
Fu
like
Manchu.
I had the Fu Man, the trucker. I used to have like Nike swooshes going one time. Yes. I had the ludicrous going. Kids would be like Luda whenever. So I mean, I always felt like the Rodman of facial hair, but good times. Well, that was really, anything else we need to kind of in this comes to mind before we lay down the Seth and Trav era of
man.
Actually, here's something. Let's talk about this. I see it in your background. Is you met my brother Jeremy, and we've talked about Jeremy on this podcast.
Yep.
Man. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that, remembering.
Dude, so I remember you first talking about Jeremy at some point, but didn't really know much about him, his story. All I knew originally was that you had a brother who had an accident and was in a wheelchair. That's kind of all I knew. And then at some point, while we were still at Thornwell, I remember getting more of the story. And I don't remember why or for whatever reason, but anyway, it came out at some point. And I, then I learned more about Jeremy and his background in running and all that. Well, it was funny. It was sort of coinciding with my entry into the world of running and racing, and started with doing triathlons, which again, like I will place all of that back on you. You are to blame for the origin into. Had you never have given me that bike, because here's what happened. I'll make it quick. You gave me that bike. It got me into the enjoyment of riding a bike again, not just as a kid, right? Just like enjoying exercising. You took me out to Paris Mountain one time. We went out and rode out there. And that was actually the first like real mountain bike trail outside of ours that we made that I'd ever ridden on. And in turn, that led me to go buy an actual like a decent mountain bike. Not that the Gary Fisher wasn't, but it was old. It's old. So I went to a bike store in Greenville, bought it was an old Specialized Hard Rock, and that was it, man. I loved that bike. It was a great bike.
Yeah, I remember.
I still have it, by the way.
Sweet.
And started riding a lot. I ended up in REI one day getting a new pair of bike shoes or something. And there's this random dude standing next to me in the aisle. And if you know me at all, I just can't help but just conversing with people. Started talking to this guy. He told me he was doing a triathlon in Greenville. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I thought that was just in the Olympics. I didn't know like normal people did that. And found the link to it, signed up for this triathlon in downtown Greenville, didn't know a thing about what I was getting ready to do. And I showed up on race day with my mountain bike in swimming trunks and was like, let's go, let's do a triathlon.
All right.
And I got there. It was a pool swim, did the swim, got out, rode the bike. I'm riding a mountain bike on the road where all these guys are on their, thousands of dollar tri-bikes, and I'm out here pedaling along on my mountain bike like a tool. And make it back. I start doing the run, and without being too graphic, I was wearing swimming trunks that had been wet, and then I went on a mountain bike ride, and now I'm running. And so it was very uncomfortable, to say the least. And the inside of my legs were being rubbed very raw.
The chafing.
It was terrible. But I finished that race, and it was the most incredible feeling I've ever had. I mean, I was probably in last place, right? Like, they kept the line open for me to finish, probably. But that got me into doing racing. It was at that, sort of as that was happening, as we were moving back down to Atlanta, and I was starting to do more of these races, that I started to get to know more of Jeremy's story. And at some point, that led me to and this was, I didn't actually meet Jeremy until we didn't even live up there anymore. We came up there. And so by the time I got to go up there with you guys and meet Jeremy, I'd obviously known, a lot more about his story and who he was as a person, right? More than just his story, but who he was as a person and his love for the Lord and people. And so, yeah, we went up there that afternoon and spent, a whole afternoon with Jeremy. And to this day, it's some of the most impactful time I've ever spent with somebody else.
Wow.
I mean, there's a reason why that picture, and I'll talk about that in a second, there's a reason why that picture hangs in my office and has been from the day that I got it. It's been in a prominent place either in my house or office every day since that day. But getting to spend time with Jeremy, and for me, what was beautiful, we did the whole painting thing, and I talk about that in a minute, but when all that was said and done, and I remember Callie and Braxton were pretty young, and they kind of went out. And I think your mom took them upstairs and was playing with them or something, or maybe your dad even. It might have even been your dad that had taken them and was playing with. It was cool. And anyway, I ended up sitting up there in the bed with Jeremy and just kind of talking with him. And you can converse, right? And you can ask questions enough to get his input and understand. And it was one of the most beautiful conversations I've ever had with another human, where, here's this guy who physically cannot speak and yet feeling more connection with him than you do with 99% of the other people.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. Yeah. And I remember talking to him, and just the conversation we got to have was so powerful. And to this day, it continues. I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it was an awesome day. I know you've talked about it before, but Jeremy paints with his feet. And I will say this is pretty cool. I don't know if this is true still, but the day that we did that painting, that day, it was the first time he had ever used hot pink in one of his paintings. So I don't know if that's still the case, but yeah.
I think I remember him doing it one more time that I'm aware of, that I remember, for someone else that he knew really loved pink.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a limited color release for him.
Well, it's awesome. I got to sit there and hold the canvas and put the paint on and paint. And I don't remember this too. Remember he painted the top of my head. Yeah. That was I've got a couple of pictures and videos of Jeremy painting the top of my head. It was great.
That's so cool. Yeah. It was interesting for you to say that, kind of the timeline around too, like when you actually physically then met him in person was around the time then you had just started to get into some of this endurance racing.
Yep.
And, which is so fascinating time wise too, because, you're listening, you don't know anything about my brother Jeremy, who was in a car rollover wreck and then had a traumatic brain injury. He was an All-American runner in college. And, I think right before his accident, he did, literally the days before, did 100-mile road bike circuit through the mountains out in Yellowstone. So, I mean, that's just who he was. Yeah. And so I think, you have that same spirit of kind of adventure and like racing and stuff like that. And I love how you said of just like Jeremy and his, slow time. It's really hard to really describe until you're in that moment with him. That part of it is like, you're so like immersed into his slow world of mechanically spelling things out or just sitting there in silence. And almost like like you said it well, like the connection of your humanity, kind of, there's no words to hide behind. I mean, there's no things to hide behind, right? Yeah. Like we're always like, I don't know, there's something about the solidarity there.
It's funny. It's hard to put into words, not putting into words.
Yeah.
Like in that,
right.
It's hard to describe in words what it's like to be in present with him, not speaking words.
Sure.
But it's wild how you see. I don't know. For me, what I keep thinking back is, I talk to my students all the time about how much the entire point is for us to be in a relationship with Christ. That's what He wants, and what trying to convey to them what it's like to have a relationship with Christ, who's physically not here, but He's more than just the Bible, and for me that became so real, meeting Jeremy and understanding that like. He was there, and there was communication, but it was so much deeper and more than you and I speaking.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
A verbal tone and a hearing back and forth.
Yeah.
It was so much more than that, right?
Yeah.
And so it really unlocked in my brain something that I'm still processing. Of I'm not equating Jeremy to Jesus, but what I'm saying is it helps you unlock a little bit of what it means to have a deeper relationship.
That is well said. And you and I have talked about this before. I think you're a fan of Henry Nouwen. I know I'm a huge fan of him, but what I love about that, what you just said reminded me of his story is, he was a famous Notre Dame, Princeton lecturer, and prolific author. And he sort of like has this story of where he kind of just disappears. I mean, he's in the spotlight everywhere, and he kind of disappears and enters these disability communities where he's serving people with special needs like Jeremy. And he calls it the downward mobility of Jesus in a world where we're always like, next thing, how do I achieve the next thing? It's like Jesus sort of went downward. So this model of like downward mobility. So in this story though, he's talking about serving this guy, Adam, who like Jeremy could not speak. And I think Nouwen talks about that in all his time of theological training, seminary, he said something like, I never learned more about Jesus in seminary than I did just sitting with Adam. And I think it's tapping in a little of what you're describing.
Yeah.
I love how you said it, like Jesus is more than just the words in the Bible. He is a person, and I can even commune with him in silence. I mean, there's, and so I love what you said about like how Jeremy kind of sparked something of that.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's interesting.
I wish so many of the people would get to experience that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it genuinely has changed the way that I look at, I mean, relationships in general, but it's changed the way I looked at relationship with Christ. Well, 100%.
Wow. That's super rad.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, we've already talked about this some. I want to go back to this because I'm really fascinated by this. So you've kind of set up well of like how you kind of got into like endurance racing and sort of this old Gary Fisher mountain bike that, so for good or bad, you can blame me. And that's all the credit I can take because I have not done any racing except for one 5K with Jeremy.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was an amazing thing. But so you've been like epic in this whole thing, done tons of races, done all this kind of stuff. And you then, are you a 2-time Ironman?
So full Ironman, I've only done one.
He said only one.
Yeah. Well, I have. So I did my one Ironman back in 2017, which is crazy. Okay. It seems so long ago now.
Wow.
And then just, I mean, honestly, dude, like for the last 4 or 5 years, I have gone to sign up to do the Ironman again. I say the Ironman. They're all over the country and the world.
Over, sure.
The one that's closest to me is in Chattanooga, and so it's just easy for me to get to. And it's always in September for the full. And for the last like 4 or 5 years, I've gone to go sign up for this race. Which you're doing this like a year in advance. You're thinking through training but every time for the last 4 years, we've either been getting ready to have some sort of significant life change, whether, job, ministry, or baby or something happening, so that like for the last 4 years, I've not had the time to really invest in training for one of those. So finally, I'm back to where no more massive, that I can see coming. No more massive changes are incoming, and so I'm targeting this upcoming year for my next full Ironman. But then I've done a handful of half Ironmans, which is the same distance, just half everything. And I've done a few of those around. And then I've done tons of other smaller triathlons and running races and mud runs and mountain bike rides and all that kind of stuff.
So my first question about this is, okay, so someone that's really, let's say they work out a lot and, they're pretty in shape, run a good bit, let's say, cardio's great, diet, blah, blah, blah. You're physically, there's a lot of races you could just jump in, right? Like you could even, arguably, could you even almost pull off like maybe a half marathon without tons of training? Like if you have a lot of,
half for sure. Yep. I mean, I can say that because I've done it. I've jumped in. I've jumped in actually being pretty ill prepared, and I've done 2 or 3 half marathons, almost like day of, having not trained for like 6 months before. So that's doable. That's not don't do that.
Don't do that.
That's a doable distance, yeah.
But I'm just curious for a reference point. Now, and I know like the Ironman has cutoffs and things to even like they're not playing around. Like if you're not time trialing a certain thing, like you're out.
Right.
But you don't have a shot if you haven't significantly trained in each of those.
Well, correct. And honestly, the biggest one, here's the reality is for the cutoff times, most people could probably, people that are in halfway decent shape.
Yep.
If you had the mental capacity to push through, you could probably do a 120-mile bike ride. You could do it, right? In singularity. Most people that are in decent enough shape could even show up day of and do a marathon. And when I say do, I mean complete. I don't mean you're running every bit of it, right?
You're finishing the marathon.
Correct. Yeah. What gets people in the triathlon sport is the swim at the beginning. That is one. I tell people all the time, it's something that you can't fake. You can fake riding a bike for a certain distance. You can fake being able to run. I don't mean, you know what I mean by faking it.
You can get through it.
You can't fake swimming 2.5 miles. You just can't do it. It's impossible. It is a great equalizer of you either put the work in and trained or you haven't, and you're gonna fail. And so the other piece of doing triathlons in general, but specifically that long of a distance, people don't understand what it's like to do that sport back to back to back. So it's like you might even be able to get in the water and swim 2.5 miles. You might be able to make it. But to get off of the water, get out of the water and hop on your bike and ride for, 6, 7, 8 hours and then run a marathon after, like, it's really difficult to comprehend how much of a toll that takes on your body if you've not trained for it. And so there's specific trainings, right? Like you train specifically to do that, to get out of the water and do those things back to back to back. So yeah, it's not to set it up as unattainable, because it's extremely attainable.
Sure.
But it's attainable by, you got to put in the work,
One thing when you said that I hadn't thought of until now is when you talk about like training your body for something that extreme, is that I think of just it in terms of sort of cardio and fitness and endurance. Like I can, but there's a real thing of like, you can pee blood, you can, like, your kidneys can literally, so I'm sure you're actually training physiologically.
You are.
Right. And your body is acclimating to.
That's right. And part of that is you learning your own body, and specifically learning because you're not just doing, so when I did my Ironman, I think my final time was like 15 hours. And part of that, I don't even know if I've told you the story. My bike broke on mile 20 of 120 miles. And I had to ride for the next 60 miles with a essentially broken chain that had bent, and I didn't know it, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it, and finally fixed it. But it was wild. So my time got thrown off a little bit, but it was like 15 hours. So you're not doing 15 hours of activity that intense without retaking in lots of fluid, lots of nutrition. And so a big part of the training plan is just learning what your body responds to, and when to intake certain things, and how much electrolytes to take in, and how much drink, how many calories, all those different things, so that you don't do things like harm your kidneys and all that, because you can. Oh,
even for lesser things. God, that's crazy. So when you were, so during the race, I mean, what is your mindset because I've read about like endurance athletes and kind of this kind of stuff. And it sounds like at some point, obviously it's still physical, but at some point it's almost fully just mental, right? I mean, it switches over to like, I mean, your muscles are firing, but it is now mental. I mean, so
I like to put it like this. By the time I got to race day, I had put in so much work that physically my body was ready to do that and 10 times more. I'm being a little facetious, but my body was ready to handle it. I had never done a full Ironman, so there was a mental hurdle of like, what is my body going to do at the end of each one of these things? For me, I was never at a point during the race that I was having to like really push through I'm not going to make it. For me, so it went. So my swim was, honestly, man, I had a blast. I was so ready that morning to do this race. And the swim is beautiful there in Chattanooga. You swim down the river. You swim under several bridges. It was a beautiful morning. I just remember smiling from ear to ear the whole time. I was swimming down the river. It's downstream swim, so you're in the groove. You just started. You've got a long day to go. And I was feeling phenomenal on the bike. I was having a blast. It's beautiful. You're riding by the bluffs there in Chattanooga, heading down into Georgia, and then my bike broke. And I threw my chain into my spokes, and I fixed it, put it back where it was supposed to be. What I didn't realize was when it threw into the spokes, it had bent the chain and twisted it. And every time that bend in the chain came back around the sprocket, it hung up and it hiccuped. And so for a while, it was a mental battle, but it was a physical battle of trying to fix the bike. Finally got that. And once that was done, then I was back to, I had to push a little bit more because I knew I'd lost a little bit of time. What really had happened, because for about 60 miles I was really just staring down, looking at my chain. I missed eating a bunch of stuff that I had to intake, and so I kind of got off on nutrition a little bit, which meant when I got off on the bike to go start running, I was cramping pretty bad. And so I had to intake a bunch of things, intake a bunch of liquid and fluid and carbs. And after about 1.5 miles or 2 miles, I actually was able to start running again. I ran for, the next couple of hours. Halfway decent pace, for having gone through that. And there was never a time where I didn't see the cutoff as attainable. I knew I was pretty good in terms of being able to finish. Yep. And so once I made it through about the halfway point of the run, I was back to smiling, and I was just ready to cross the finish line.
It felt like this is in the bank.
Yeah. Like so I tell people it this way, like, you tell somebody the distances: you swim 2.5 miles, bike 120, and then run a marathon. And most people's reaction is, yeah, I could never do that. But then I respond with, okay, if you showed up to a graduate level college course in something you've never done before, and you get the final exam on day one, you're going to look at that and go, there's no way. I have no idea. But if you take the course and learn the material, then you take the exam and you're ready for it. This is the same thing, right? Like, nobody can just show up on race day and do that race. But you put in the work, you study the material, right? And then you're ready for final exam.
No, that's a good, that's a good analogy. So what would you probably hard to exactly know on this, but what would you guess would be the attrition rate of that? Like we're 10% didn't make,
it's race to race is so different. Every race course has its own unique thing. Chattanooga has a thing where the time of year that it happens tends to be really hot still, and there's a whole lot of the run course that's really exposed, and so there's quite a bit of dropout a lot of times during the run. Percentage wise,
because I was curious, like, was it the swim? Like, what knocked the most out? I mean,
it's normally two things. The swim knocks a lot of people out. There's a lot of people that for whatever reason think that they can swim farther than they've ever swum in their entire life, having never trained for it. For whatever reason,
train for a mile.
But man, like 2.5 miles is a long way to swim. That's
crazy.
Like I urge everybody to, like, at some point go to a lake and then look on Google Maps and map out what 2.5 miles is, looking out and see how far that is away. It's very far. And so you imagine swimming that distance, it's crazy. So the swim kicks a lot of people, and then the first cutoff of the run a lot of times will kick a lot of people.
By then you're done physically.
A lot of people have made it through the bike. Sure. And then we'll even start running, and after, a lot of times either right there at the beginning of the run or that halfway cutoff will kick, which is brutal.
Oh, if it's the halfway cut, man, you've done all this, and I can't imagine to fail at that.
But I will say this though, if you're at that point where you're close, know already, like, ahead of time that you're not going to make it.
Yeah. You're not going to make it. Yeah. So you made it. Mm-hmm. So describe, what was that like to finish?
Yeah.
And make it.
Yeah.
Be an Ironman. What is it like to be, what was that?
So it's funny. So the moment, it's two things. It's a moment of, and then it's like a mindset afterwards, right? The moment of is the most incredible thing, right? Like there's truthfully, there's like, outside of events in my faith, there's getting married and the birth of my children. But that crossing the finish line of an Ironman is up there with pretty powerful moment,
I bet.
And so you come, different places do it different, but you come down this long red carpet, kind of down the chute, and there's a whole bunch of people there, and they announce your names. You got a bib on, it's got your number. So somebody's, spotting from the back, and there's enough gap in between everybody. They announce your name and they say, Seth Teegarden, congratulations, you are an Ironman. And, that you cross the finish line. And it's a pretty euphoric feeling, that you just did something that you put your mind to, and now this is the result. And I had a lot of friends and family that were there that night, and so it was cool. It was such a high. Now on the back end, now moving forward, it changes your mentality in life. The fact that you've done that thing.
I was curious.
It just makes. I struggled, like, I never ever want it to come across like it gives you an arrogance, because I hate it when people express it in that way. But it just gives you an air of confidence that you've done this thing, and and a lot of times, you enter a room and you don't have to say a word about it. Internally, like, I've done this thing. Like, I'm comfortable and confident in that. It gives you confidence in interactions without even knowing it. It's just sort of, background in your mind a little bit,
Oh, for sure. And it's a heck of a icebreaker. I mean, geez, you have kind of the winning.
It is, although it gets really annoying after a while. Like, I really don't like to be that guy. It's like, I've done an Ironman,
Yeah.
Although I've got the tattoo on my leg, but
You let the leg do the talking.
That's right.
That is wild. Yeah, I think about that too, like the legacy of that, or just the like even like the today of that, like you said, sort of just internally, the reminder, or the maybe lesser things or other things that are just you're going through adversity and like I did this.
That's right.
I mean, that's
right.
That's really a gift that just keeps on giving through.
Yeah.
That.
No, exactly.
It's pretty wild. So, yeah, that's super cool. I wanted to definitely hit that in this conversation and hear about that. We've already talked about, sort of some of your foster care journey. I was curious to kind of go back to that some. Two things on that, and then I want to kind of wind this into where we're going to land for a bit in this home stretch with what you're doing currently. But back to kind of your foster care experience and journey in that residential group care. One thing is, how did the origin of that story start?
Yeah.
And then secondly, I'm really fascinated by the second part of this is what you took away from that, like zoomed out now, looking back, and what that then may have set you up for now going forward. So those kind of two things.
Okay. So origins, so the reel back is from as young as third grade, I've known that I've wanted to do something in full-time ministry. I knew that calling on my life as a third grade boy. And it was actually, it's kind of crazy. I actually remember the specific day. It was September 7th when I was a little boy. I think it was 1997. No, 93. Anyway, one of the 90s. But I was in third grade, and I do remember it was September 7th. And I knew from that day I wanted to do something to serve the Lord in some sort of ministry capacity. As a third grade boy, I had no idea what that looked like, right? All I knew was just keep doing what I'm doing. And as I got into high school, that looked a little bit more like maybe going to Bible college, maybe pastoral ministry, something like that. And so graduated Bible college. I referenced this earlier, but here I am, 21 years old, married with a kid on the way, actually at the point when I graduated. And at 21, I was like, all right, God, I've got my degree in pastoral ministry. I'm married with a kid on the way. Where's my church? Let's go. I'm here. I'm ready to serve you. Let's go. Do your thing. And, I imagined, God just kind of looked down and chuckled and was like, oh, you fool. Who do you think you are? And to this day, I'm so thankful that he didn't put that in my path. Because at 21 years old, I was very ill prepared to have done anything, leading any group of people. So by sheer happenstance, humanly, the Lord orchestrated it. By humanly, my wife and I both ended up working at a group home there outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. And it wasn't a Christian home. It wasn't really even, other than the fact that we just did stuff with kids, it wasn't similar at all to what we did as house parents. It was group care and a therapeutic milieu setting for kids that, for all intents and purposes, were just really bad kids. A lot of these kids have been kicked out of every possible school system you could be in. Multiple of them had been sentenced to us from juvenile, and so that was the type of kid we had. It was rough, real tough. We had to physically do restraints all the time. We were getting beat up and kicked and spit on. I mean, this was multiple times a day. And so I did that for almost 2 years, and I was a supervisor there over the staff. And one day, Diana had stayed home once our daughter was born. And I came home from work one day, and I was just like, Diana, we got to figure something out. Like, this isn't where we're headed. I don't know what that looks like. God hasn't opened the door for church ministry at this point, but both of us have a heart for ministry. I don't know. We've got to have this conversation. And so over the next few days, she started praying, I started praying, and she came to me one day. She was like, hey, I've just got an idea, because, you and I both want to do ministry. We've now both had this kind of random experience with children's homes. Maybe there's such thing as a Christian children's home. and at 22 years old or whatever, we had never even thought about that there was even such a thing as Christian children's home. So we Googled, we lived in Knoxville at the time, and we had, we were both from the Atlanta area, and we had lots of friends and family in the Greenville, South Carolina area. So we kind of targeted that Tri-City area, Knoxville to Greenville to Atlanta, of children's homes. And dude, there were tons. We had no idea that there were that many Christian children's homes. And so we kind of blindly just started sending resumes out, kind of seeing what was there. And, we ended up having a couple of interviews, a couple of different places, one of which was Christian City, where we ended up 5 years later. And then ultimately we ended up at Thornwell there in Clinton, South Carolina. And so went there, interviewed. It was pretty clear that was, that was where the Lord was leading us. But even at the beginning, we knew that we were getting ready to go be live-in parents for 8 middle school girls. But I don't think either one of us were really comprehending what that actually meant on a daily basis. Not a clue. And so anyway, that's the origin of how we ended up there. And then, as far as kind of where we're at now and how that's transitioned us into what we do, I would say with no short, it has impacted every single bit of our lives and ongoing ministry from that time. Ongoing, we ended up serving 7 years total as house parents between those two different homes. On so many levels. One level, the friendships that we've made with other house parents. The podcast we're doing right now. We've got a couple of friends that we know from Thornwell that we've remained tight with, and so there's those friendships that when you quote unquote go to do battle with somebody, it forms these lifelong friendships. And then there's one couple that we actually worked with at both different children's homes, the Grubers, who we worked with there at Thornwell for several years. And then 5 years later, when we moved down to Christian City, we'd been there about a year, and then we reached out to them, and they actually came and joined us there at Christian City and worked them for a few years there. And so and again, like dear friends of ours, we've got from Christian City, there's a couple that are currently serving on the mission field in Africa that took all their kids over to Africa. It's funny, I joked with Josh Gruber that this other guy, Josh, was the Travis of Christian City, bald, tattoos, beard, and loves Jesus, and now he's serving the Lord in Africa with all of his kids. It's beautiful.
Nice.
So the first genuine practical thing, we've taken away so many friendships that we have lifelong.
Yeah.
And then just in terms of the experience, one of the things that we did at both places, and even more so at the second home, was we really spent a lot of time with the parents of our kids that were in our home. And at Christian City, the second home, we ended up having a lot less foster kids from the foster care system and a lot more private placement kids that were products of homelessness or neglect or something like that. And so we had a program that we actually worked directly with those parents, and we worked really hard helping those parents learn parenting skills and just simple things like meal planning, structured house care, how you take care of your kids in the environment you live in, and getting up on time, and basic things. And so we got to work with we weren't just managing chaos of 8 kids. We got to do some really cool things in terms of ministry to these parents as well, and help them. But that, just to set the stage, to be perfectly clear, that took a lot of work, because here I am, at the time, late 20s, 29, 30-year-old white kid who's trying to teach, quote unquote, a African-American family who's got 8 kids, and the mom's got 8 kids with multiple baby daddies, and so there was a lot of work that went into building trust with those people that was that really had to go deep. And so that was powerful. I learned so much just having to learn how to bridge some of those gaps and stereotypes and racial divides, and really learn what it looked like to just love on people. And I've taken so much away from that. And then, there's the practical thing. And I now I'm thankfully I'm a little unique when it comes to sort of youth ministry. I'm a full-time youth pastor. But I'm 35 years old. I'll be 36 here in a few weeks, and I've got 4 kids. One of whom's a teenager. I've got 2 of my own kids in my own youth group. But having been serving in various capacities of full-time ministry for the majority of our 15-year marriage, I'm unique in youth ministry. A lot of youth pastors are early 20s, just married or not married, don't have kids, may or may not have had any kind of formalized training. And so it's awesome that I have that, but I get to tell our parents all the time, look, I'll just, nothing your kid can do or will ever do is going to surprise me. Because if it can happen in a home, I've already experienced it. We've literally walked through every possible thing that a teenager could do, the good and the bad. And so from that practical sense, it's really given me an opportunity to continue to minister to our parents, and as well as just, nothing's really phases me, right? Like, our students can walk through some dark things, and it doesn't take me by surprise, right? It's and while there's a sadness to that's gone on, there's also there's a way in which it allows you to, if you have a student come to you and tells you something that they've struggled with or that's happened, and your first reaction is, oh my word, well, you've really set yourself back in terms of being able to connect. And so just on a practical sense, that's been a good thing. So yeah,
dude, it sounds like, you laid that out well, of just like the incredible foundation that helped build in both understanding different cultural contexts and having humility, having learning, and being trusted. I mean, that's take that anywhere.
I'll add one other thing too. And I don't think I fully comprehended this until our time in house parenting was over, but it's funny, as we ended that and moved up here to LJ to begin, sort of a new chapter of ministry in local churches, I would describe what we used to do, and almost without question, everybody you would tell that to would be like, wow, that's pretty impressive. I could never do that. And then almost the second thing out of their mouth was, man, that must have been so rewarding. And initially, I just never really said anything, and in my brain, I was like, no, it wasn't, actually. And I started musing over that and thinking, like, why is that my first reaction? And so here's what, I'll tell people this now, and I'll they'll say, man, that must have been so rewarding. And I'll actually say, like, actually, no, it wasn't. Humanly speaking, if you want to look at the 7 years that we spent as house parents, I can, we talked a minute ago about the sparkle in a kid's eyes. I can count on one hand, the number of times that you feel like a breakthrough moment, right? Where you feel like, man, I really just saw an actual impact that I made on a kid's life. And what I want to say to that is that's not a bad thing. Because what I realized is I think so often people are looking at it in terms of what's my immediate feedback. And you're losing the mindset of you're doing something bigger. And so I use this illustration. There's a pretty cool movie that I have enjoyed watching for a while. It's called The Guardian, and it stars Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher. And Ashton Kutcher's character plays a guy that's training with the Coast Guard to be a rescue swimmer, and Kevin Costner plays the old seasoned vet that's teaching him using various methods that nobody wants to use. And at one point, towards the end of the movie, Ashton Kutcher asks Kevin Costner's character, he said, when you're dropped down at a wreck site in the water, you dropped out of the helicopter, you're dropped at a site where people are in the water needing help, and there's a ton of people around. He said, you've only got a certain amount of time where there's only a certain amount of fuel that the chopper can burn. You've only got a certain limited time to get people in and out. He said, how do you know who to save and who to let go? And he gives this great answer, and he says, I don't. He said, I come to the first person I see, and I take them, and then I swim as hard as I can for as long as I can, and I let the sea take the rest. Now, hear me before you just go, whew. What I've had to learn is I don't do what I do for the moments, for the wow, for the, man, that moment was powerful. Those things are bonuses. But I do what I do because there's a sea of raging inferno, and I might have the opportunity to get to swim to one person and have some amount of ability to rescue them. And I swim as hard as I can for as long as I can. And where that came into play as far as house parenting goes is, there's a ton of turnover, right? You might have a kid for 2 days, you might have a kid for 2 months, and it's difficult if you look at it in terms of, you're pouring so much in only for them, watch them walk away. And you have to go back, and then sometimes that same day, that place gets filled with a new kid, and you have to come back in with the same energy that you had. And so if you look at it like, man, I'm going as hard as I can for as long as I can while that kid is here, and then when the Lord moves them on, I go to the next thing, and I keep going, and I keep going. And then you get to a point where you get to look back and you get to see, man, like, God has given me an ability to be part of some cool rescues. But I never look at it in terms of, man, how many people have I saved, right? How many people have I rescued? How many cool moments did I have? Because the reality is, you'll know this when you enter into that world of foster care and adoption and all of those, there's a lot of really tough moments. There's a lot of really difficult things. And it becomes easy to put your focus on the moments and not the bigger picture. So I hope that kind of, I mean to kind of ramble, but I hope that kind of frames out a little bit of, there's a big picture mindset that it gave me.
Yeah. Well, and that is really the right perspective to look at foster care is, are you a stable place?
Yeah.
These kids, back to their stories, are swirling with uncertainty, swirling with trauma, swirling with all kinds of, just things.
Yeah.
Were you that safe place where they were safe and they felt loved? If it's 2 days, if it's 10 days,
that's right.
A year. And that really is it. And like you said, like, we'll never know in many of these cases. I mean, this isn't just foster care, but
that's
the
right.
way when we interact with with lives, until heaven, until eternity, I think where the intersection or where, maybe their life turned around, we'll never know. But most of the time we'll never know. And, but that's really a cool perspective. That's a good perspective. So, as we kind of get in this home stretch now of kind of the last segment here, you've set up really of kind of how this then, you've always had this dream to be in ministry. Ministry's been the hallmark of your family, and you guys have served, faithfully and well together and all that stuff. In your current role as a full-time youth pastor in Ellijay, Georgia, I want to hear, like, what are some of the biggest things now in your life that you're imparting on kids? Yeah, let's start there. What do you feel like here?
Yeah, so where my heart is kind of really at is I really, I'll set this up with sort of a little background. I grew up in a wonderful home, taught me amazing things. I love my mom and dad. Matter of fact, they live with us still. We bought a big house together when we moved up here. They're entering into the years of, at some point needing other people to, and so I love my mom and dad. We go to church together. Amazing. I also recognize, the way that I was brought up, working through some of those things. And part of it was I was brought up to my faith was a very sort of checkbox based, right? We went to church, you read your Bible, you did your devotions, went to Christian school, all those things. And while there was very much this talk of relationship, was never actually explained and lived out. So what I've really tried to pivot, and what I really want to try to help our students see, and people in general, but my specific context is to our middle school and high school students here in Ellijay. What I really want them to see is that their faith in Christ is not about getting your Bible and opening it and reading it to check a box. Now, if you love Jesus, it will probably look like you reading your Bible at some point, right? But what I want our students to see is, I want you to truly know. This goes back to a little bit of the conversation with Jeremy, and I want you to truly know the person of Jesus and how much he loves you back, and teaching them ways to engage with that and feel that. And that's, it includes 1,000% God's word, but it's so much more than that. And helping them see Jesus Christ and the big picture gospel, that we were made to be in his image, in relationship with him, and that sin broke that away, and yet he came running back to rescue us back into relationship, not into perfection. God didn't want just a perfect world, or he would have just wiped it all away in the beginning when it failed. He wanted relationship. And so just helping our students understand the big picture of you were made to be back in relationship with your Savior. And so all the things that go into that, right? Like how often do we try to shove other things in to fill that hole, of our own making and our own doing. But at the end of the day, like the only thing that will really satisfy, is that, I say it all the time, you have a Jesus-sized hole in your heart. And the only way that'll fill it is Jesus. And we try to fit other things in. So kind of big picture, I just want our students to see how much of an actual real relationship with their Savior that he wants for them to have. And, and then practically, like, how do you actually go about doing that?
So, yeah, because we're in a crisis of relationship right now. We know with studies showing what smartphones and social media have ironically led to further distancing, right?
Yes.
So what has kind of been the kids' feedback towards that message of restoration relationship, or that you're looking in it in the wrong place? It's why you're anxious about that, but here's the place. Like, have you gotten some good feedback of kids like really like resonating with that message?
Yeah, no, 100%. And when I say this, I don't mean this as a detriment to anybody before, but so oftentimes it feels like a new thing, to really dive into what does it look like to actually be loved by God, to know that the gospel story isn't just I walked down, I said a prayer, I said amen. Oh, I even got dunked in the tank. I'm good to go. That it's so much bigger than that. And so feedback positive, 100%. But a lot of it is just, it's kind of new, right? It's kind of new to helping people see and understand that there's so much more beauty to our Christian faith and Christendom as a whole, right? That we get to experience with our brothers, dare I say, outside of even the Southern Baptist denomination, imagine that. And helping others to see that Jesus Christ is so much bigger than that. And he wants you to be a part so much so that he literally humbled himself to come down to this earth to become like his creation, to make it so that we could have that back with him. So to answer your question, good feedback. A lot of it is really processing and thinking through things of and then part of that is on me. Like, how do I help each individual student see that specifically in their context? Because it's different, whether it's a kid that plays on a football team or is in the band or is homeschooled or whatever, each one of those kids is going to see that in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, makes total sense. So, curious too, what have you kind of learned from them? What are the things that the kids have sort of taught you in your time there?
Man,
are teaching you?
Yeah, continuously. I think specifically over the last couple of years, just learning to just be more of who I am, just be completely confident in me. And it's funny, the more that I've leaned into just being me and seeing them just be okay with that, I've learned, what, I don't really have to put on a thing. I don't really have to be somebody I'm not. They want authenticity, and people in general, but specifically teenagers, right? Like they see
this
through
generation.
Yes.
Yep.
And so that's been really cool to just continue to learn what it means to just be authentically me. And I credit my time with our students for that.
Yeah, that's a great example of that. Yeah, I love that because we're in a time where, it's so easy to always, you're thinking about all the bad things of, what's the latest generation and all that they're, but it's like, that is a huge lesson. That's a huge gift they're sort of illuminating is authenticity. And that's why I think they're so averse to, even, we've talked about this before, but like leadership structures and things that used to be sort of a pillar of like, well, people just recognize that, but it's like everything's sort of questioned because it's like, I want to know, like, are you real or is that legit? Like, so that's not a wrong desire. I mean, so kind of leading the way on that charge.
Well, and a little bit, we saw this some as house parents, but like just the ability to like build a little bit of trust and some longevity, just time wise,
Yeah.
you know, for
Yeah.
these kids to see that you're not running out of their life in the next 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Which they, you know, and even in our context where, you know, I'm talking about student ministry, not even foster care, but like showing them that you're there day in and day out, you know, and it's really just been about doing that, whether that's showing up to the games, which I'm there a lot. Now, one thing that's pretty cool when, you know, you live in a small town, you know, we have one high school and one middle school. So going to all of your kids' sporting events becomes a lot easier than having to jump around to 10 different places. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's funny. Knock out about 8 at this game. I'll do another 12 at this game.
That's right.
That's funny. Very cool. Well, thanks for sharing about that and kind of the things you're learning and the things you're sort of teaching and where sort of all that's going right now. I do want to ask you as you close this out. These are the questions I love to share with final closing questions to all the guests. What are you most proud of in your life today at 36?
5, almost 6.
5, going on, going to be 36.
I think just looking back now at my time as an adult, you know, sort of my married life, you know, 15 years of being married. And there's been a lot of life, you know, there's been a lot of life lived. And through that, there's been some deep heartbreaks inside of and outside of ministry. And there's been some difficult days, both as Diana and I as a couple that have had to work through things in our marriage, as parents, job related in terms of being house parents, even in terms of moving up to LJ and moving into full-time ministry. And we've faced some, you know, sometimes some of the deepest pains and the deepest hurts can come from people that, you know, are equally engaged in ministry with you and can be really, really hard and painful. So for me, looking back at 36 and, you know, my adult life, I'm proud that we are still where we're at, loving each other well, loving our family well, loving Jesus well, and doing that as a family. I'm proud that we have made it through, and I know that, you know, the next however many years of life will continue to see pain and adversity come for sure. But I'm proud that we have made it through what we've made it through. There's been some amazing times, right? Life in general has been really good. But to have gone through some of the really dark things that we've had to walk through as a couple and individually, I'm proud that we're still where we're at, loving each other and our family well.
Cool. Love that. Well, it was me and Jesse, I think, talked about this in a podcast we did of like, also just in terms of marriage, where marriage can be this like, and Jesse and I are very real about how we're very different. And I think most couples are very different. That's why you're attracted. But we really have to fight hard we fight a lot, but we have to also fight well and hard to really understand one another. Yes. And so I love you kind of saying that as you're kind of assessing everything, how hard what you've been through and that you're continuing to be faithful.
Well, dude, I would say we didn't actually learn how to actually communicate with each other until about 5.5 years ago. You know, we were 10 years into marriage before we really learned how to actually communicate well. Yeah. And still learning, but like, you know, we had a point where we got to where it was, you know, it became paramount that we tackled that barrier and tackled it well. And it took a while. I mean, again, still doing it, but like, I mean, it took a long time to work through those, but you know, man, 10 years is a long time to be together and to have struggled through how to communicate well. And, you know, I say like it was 10 years of struggle. It was not. It was 10 beautiful years. But learning through those, you know, how each one of us communicates with each other, and you know, that whole thing. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes I think you look back and go, how did we? You know, there was the beautiful times, but it was harder than we realized, or not having those. Because I mean, learning communication skills in marriage is, I mean, you can be deep into it years and decades and still are struggling on that. So that's cool. You're on that track. I know I'm working hard on that. So final question is, T.S. Eliot has a great line. I always think of it a lot is, where's the life we've lost in living? He asks. We get to middle age, especially, and we can sort of lose that spark for life. Where do you find your spark? How do you keep that spark for you kind of going day in and day out?
So, I mean, first and foremost, it comes from my relationship with Christ. I would have to put that first. Just knowing my true identity being in a child of Him and Him loving me, right? And having that settled has allowed me, I mentioned this a minute ago, but allowed me to genuinely be me. And dude, and sometimes to my wife's utter despair, I have learned really well how to be me in the last few years. And, whether that's, so I whether that's speaking the way that I speak, whether that's just engaging with people the way I engage, so I've got a big Suburban that I drive around. It's a 01 2500 Suburban. This thing is a tank. I love it. I've equipped it with all the camping gear. I've got a rooftop tent, all this stuff. But I just repainted it, and I painted it in a gray bed liner spray. But I accented the door handles and the front Chevy emblem with hot pink. And so I drive around with this bright hot pink and gray Suburban, these little things that it's funny, but it's just me being me, and just enjoying who God made me to be is so amazing, and it just brings such a smile to my face. And then just being able to see, whether it's just being goofy, whether it's doing whatever, but just being able to watch other people enjoy life because maybe you had some tiny little part of that. Just gives me so much joy and energy. I love that. Whether that be my kids, my wife, my ministry, in town, whatever. Just getting to know that I might be just a little bit of a part of somebody having some amount of joy in their life. Just gives me all that I need.
Very cool. Yeah, and I know, and I can imagine you've helped give a lot of people joy and continue to do so, and it reciprocates. Very cool, Seth.
Man.
Love that as a close, and super rad to hang out with you on this conversation.
Absolutely. It's been a blast, dude.
All right. Talk to you later.
Peace out.
Hope you enjoyed the episode today. Check out the show notes for any links or resources shared in the episode. If you enjoy the podcast, it would be really appreciated if you'd subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it with friends. May we all remember these words from writer Mary Oliver. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it.